So we're going to be talking about the psychology of a serial killer tonight with Anthony Tyler. And let me just say this again for those on YouTube that didn't hear me. Some things could be triggering. I know you don't like talking about dark stuff, but it's Halloween. If we're going to get into like studying fear and the dark, I want to really get into it and see what the hell's going on with these guys' brains, what's going through their mind. Obviously, it's not normal, but we won't get into too graphic details. So apologize about the silence when I was talking. I'm sure that was weird, but it's just a part of the live show technical stuff. I'll edit it out later. April, by the way, you watched Hereditary. You made it through it. You made it all the way to the end. Congratulations. You know, that's a tough. Have you seen that, Anthony? That's a tough watch, man.
No, that one, it keeps slipping through the cracks. I mean, there's always so much media to watch, and there's things on the list that end up falling. Like, there's a couple of times I've wanted to watch it, and then it's been so intense that people have been like, it might not be the time. Like I remember once I was trying to think last time I traveled somewhere, like on a plane. And for some reason, I was just looking at movies. I saw horror movies, like, oh, maybe this is the time to watch Hereditary. And my girlfriend was like, no, you don't want anyone to look over your shoulder and see that movie. And I was like, okay, good call. Another time. So no, not yet.
So I want to say this too.
It's absolutely brutal.
It is brutal, brother. It's a brutal. We talked about it last time on the broadcast. I can't believe some people actually. I warned you guys when you watched it, but so I just to let you guys know, there may be some triggering stuff here, but I'd like to think that this show is definitely based around exploring consciousness. That doesn't mean it's love and light and crystals all the time. We want to see why people do what they do. And in the out-of-body experience, for sure, if you do it enough, you're going to run into some dark stuff. So I feel like talking to Anthony Tyler, if you've listened to his podcast before, you know who this is. But if you haven't, you need to go check out Black Hoodie Alchemy podcast. You can get it on Spotify. And Anthony really gets into the kind of dark psychology of this stuff. So even though I'm kind of the mind behind the mask in the Fringe FM, we like to talk stuff, keep it a little dark and cool. But Anthony, when it comes to conscious exploration and psychology, I don't know too many other people other than just therapists themselves that are willing to go that deep to try to figure stuff out. So we're digging into the psychology of serial killers, what drives them, how investigators kind of profile them, how society notices, or do we? That's the thing. Do we notice red flags before it's too late? And I've talked to enough people, especially women. I'm not putting this on women, but especially women, where, like we were talking about last broadcast, they get this intuitive vibe, and it makes you wonder, how many of these people have we walked by on a daily basis and not known that they've got some head issues, So, yeah, I'm just curious too, though, Anthony, what is your fascination with it? Because you do really well at telling the stories, man. I mean, Bryce is in here too. He loves your podcast. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. First off, my dad is a retired detective for the Anchorage Police Department, and he worked different fraud related departments. He also worked crimes against children, and he was a beat cop for a while. So I have just a little bit of that investigative bug. I did some independent journalism for the Last American Vagabond for a few years, much earlier on, like in my early 20s. And so that investigative streak has always run strong for me. And my dad actually, he through the financial crimes division, worked on the serial killer case in Alaska, Israel Keys. And I have something that I think is a really good opening that is not specifically about Israel Keys. So I won't get into him too much. He might come up later, but that's one of those like modern infamous killers that has received the full treatment on like the TV documentaries and stuff. He was a weird one that would travel across state borders. Like I'll say this, he would travel. The only person he murdered in Alaska was the last one, which got him caught. And my dad polygraphed the victim's boyfriend and father and was involved in tracking the financial trail that led to eventually catching him. But he never like had direct interaction with Israel Keys himself. This guy he would travel from Alaska and he would go to a different state. He would abduct someone, or he would get a car. He would rent a car, and then he would go to another state, abduct someone, go to another state, kill them, go to another state, another fresh state, bury their body, then go back to the original state. And he would even stash murder weapons and like murder kits with like money that he had literally gotten in bank robberies. So he was a crazy guy. Like it makes sense why people ended up making documentaries about him, because he was very insane. But yeah, so I mean, this stuff has always fascinated me, and for specific reasons, I think I'm not someone who says like, I think it's kind of weird when people, maybe it's, it could just be like just a flippant use of the language. They're not thinking it through all the way. But I think it is weird when people say like, oh, my favorite serial killer is this person. And like 99% of the time, what people mean is like, that's the most interesting. But like, it's, there's a lot of times I don't think there's anything wrong with all the true crime fascination these days, but you really have to walk a fine line between the investigation and the glorification. And,
right.
So that's something I always try to walk as well.
Well, it's really huge in the podcast world, big time, man. In fact, when we were asking about like what should we do for the Halloween, like for the radio station, because we're just going to go live and do crazy stuff all Halloween, and a lot of people, especially I think Sudi brought it up first, but a lot of people brought up, hey man, let's do a murder mystery, and even on TV shows, like this is something. It's like, oh, if you talk about it, it's a sensitive subject, and yet every single one of us are glued to it, right? What do you think that is? Mm-hmm. Just your opinion.
I think at this point, it really has something to do. We could get really esoteric and then get a little more concrete. Like, I think it really has to do with the Jungian consideration of the apocalypse and just like the root word of apocalypse really meaning revelation. With all the technology these days, the internet now more than ever being this weird mirror of projection, providing a lot of insight and also a lot of echo chambers. It's really providing a clearer portal into the sort of collective unconscious, and I think we're seeing a lot of the raw material that we haven't worked through as a collective. And I think that part of the fascination with true crime is trying to wrap our head, it's collective shadow work, basically. And I think that there's, just like individual shadow work, like fundamentally, it's a very healthy thing. And just because you're fixated temporarily on something, quote unquote, negative, it doesn't mean that it's unhealthy. And in fact, sometimes you have to work through those negative things so that, like, for instance, in your own psychology, so that you can separate the difference between, malevolent things inside you that we all have, like things that start out just as shitty character traits that could blossom into terrible things potentially. You have to separate those things from maybe something that are the wounded child archetype within you. And you don't know until you start to sift into that sort of deeper chasms of your own psychology. So I think, and that's what people are trying to figure out with their fascination with true crime. I really do think that. And sometimes it can become an obsession in its own right. But I think, true crime, this is not the first true crime obsession, like culturally for that matter. It ebbs and flows, and I think it'll ebb before too long.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about this too because of the Ed Gaines thing that they did on Netflix. Like they really took some liberty. They took some liberties there, but it's like they glorified the guy, in a sense, right? So first, before we get into like, I want to get into like you were talking about earlier, maybe the guy you were discussing or someone that's not very well known, but I think we should make the distinction between, what's a killing spree, a mass killer, and like a serial killer, right? I mean, obviously, a killing spree is some person that just goes on a rampage, right? Like Andrew, I guess his name's Cunanan in 1997. That's we have all kinds of cases of that, which there's a psychology behind that too. But then there's like mass killers, and mass killers commit multiple murders in a single location or event, typically like within a few hours or so. The psychologists say that those guys act out of some kind of deep-seated rage. Usually it's political ideology, some kind of ideological thing. But serial killers, the reason why I think people find them so interesting, this is just my opinion, and the reason why it's so infamous is because they kill multiple people over an extended period with like in a significant time, and they also have like this cooling off period between each murder. It's so meticulous and plotted and villainish, they spread them out over time, they kind of cool off, and then they do it again, and then they have like some kind of weird psychological compulsion that drives their actions, and then they usually target, and maybe you can help me out here with this, is like specific types of people, victims, Even some of them have ritualistic elements in their crimes. So there's a difference in mass killers and killing spree people, like I guess shooters or whatever, and a serial killer. A big psychological difference.
Yeah, and one of the components of the serial killer is this sort of sexual thing, but not exclusively. That is a major facet, but as we'll get into, I have sort of just a bit of exposition that I'm leading towards. So I'll get into shortly. That will answer your question more thoroughly. But there is that running theme of the Madonna / like sacred whore or Madonna whore complex, rather, meaning like this. Often the serial killer will have an idealistic version of a woman in an extremely unhealthy way, that like this perfect thing, and those are the guys who are usually going out and killing prostitutes because they think that they're like quote unquote doing society a favor or something. And yeah, they do. That is like pretty much verbatim what they say. Like they have a very weird ideal that came from lack of whether it was parental neglect or abuse, but there's deeper angles, and this is where I'm getting with it. You're talking about compulsions, so let me lay down a trail of breadcrumbs for you. Now, once upon a time, I was curious about serial killers and possession from a Carl Jungian perspective. I didn't expect to find, and I will make a disclaimer saying that this is not some sort of outright demonic possession case that I'm arguing for. But what you will find, especially if you're familiar with Jung's work, is that there is a lot more food for thought here than you might consider if you're, assuming that only the like really wackadoo Christians would have this sentiment, because right. It's not literal possession, but there's something going on here, and it's open to debate and interpretation. So
you mean Christians kind of believe that a demon from the other world possesses a human body, like in the Exorcist type thing, takes them over.
Well,
and they and I don't even mean that all Christianity is wackadoo. Like, so I'm not like possession. That's something that we've gotten into on the show. We'll maybe expound upon that a bit, because by the end of this little bit, we'll see that some of there is overlap in the brain psychology as a little teaser. But so I'm not saying that all possession
is completely off the rocker either. But there's there's the difference between studied like historical Catholic exorcism, which takes mental illness into account. That's a whole thing these days, especially, and just going to like a Southern Baptist church and just having the priest do like some magic on your head. You know what I mean? Like that's the, like just the Benny Hinn like magic jacket type shit, that the Joel Osteen bullshit. Like there's plenty of quote unquote exorcists that are just doing that shit. So,
Right.
and there was a documentary that talked about, that was like produced by Christians before Bundy was executed, where he talked about he was like a part of his reason that he killed was because he was a porn addict, like explicitly, like that was the main reason that he killed. And so that's like, so those are the kind of people oftentimes that are saying that, oh, serial killers are possessed. But like I said, there's a bit more here. So let me break this down. So if you're trying to find, some sort of empiricism in this spiritual, even superstitious stuff, you try to look for commonalities. People talk about hits on the head that change personality, so they're just a concussive thing. But what's going on more than that? More specifically, there is it's hard to say in how many cases, because no one is doing this as a standard when serial killers go into prison. But there's a lot of cases, personal accounts of serial killers saying they have a history of seizures, not necessarily getting diagnosed with epilepsy, but showing that they do have seizures from time to time, and in certain cases, more than one, like Richard Ramirez, Arthur Shawcross, the Genesee River Killer, and others as well. They've shown that they actually have temporal lobe anomalies. Arthur Shawcross had a cyst on his temporal lobe.
Really?
Richard Ramirez actually had, temporal lobe epilepsy. Guess who also had temporal lobe epilepsy? Dostoevsky. Yeah. A lot of other really brilliant thinkers and philosophers in history. And most of the time, temporal lobe epilepsy gives people debilitating seizures that, because it stimulates this specific part of the brain that deals with symbolism and religious experience, it gives them religious experiences in their seizures. Dostoevsky talked about this often. It's how it's contributed heavily to all his writing. And also, guess who else had temporal lobe epilepsy? Anneliese Michel, who was the real life inspiration for the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And that's a really controversial case because the Catholic exorcist at this somewhere, it might have been in Bavaria, it was Germany, I think, in the 70s, ended up killing her because they exacerbated the exorcism in terrible ways. And she stopped eating, and they basically didn't like stop and get her the proper medical attention. She starved herself. But that's a whole other thing, man. So what is going on with the temporal lobe epilepsy? What's going on? Well, some of that is debatable. Like, I don't have all the answers, but what we can say is with the studies done in temporal lobe epilepsy, people do have these, like oddly religious experiences. So in a case like someone like Richard Ramirez, who has his cousin or an uncle, it was a distant relative who was around, come back from Vietnam and show him like Polaroids of people that he's murdered and a bunch of gore and shit like that. And Richard Ramirez is like 12, and also growing up in poverty and in California, and also getting hits on the head and starting to develop, temporal lobe anomalies. Instead of being like Dostoevsky, he's going to start doing sick shit. And that's what happened. And then presumably in these temporal lobe epileptic seizures, he's seeing some really fucked up shit. And
see, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's all documented stuff. That's zero speculation right there. So We see, and what else is involved with the temporal lobe? Sleep paralysis.
That figures. Yeah.
It's yeah. So there's this whole like weird just confluence of modern science, abnormal psychology and modern science, and the occult, especially once you realize that possession and sleep paralysis are naturally in the mix with the brain sciences. Again, all documented, mind you. And Annalise Michel, it's heavily debatable how, like, people will go back and forth. That's a really crazy case. What I will say, without going into the whole story, is I do think that there was some unexplainable stuff going on there. I don't think that it was handled well. I don't think it. I don't believe in possession in the classical. I don't believe in a literal heaven and hell. I'm a bit more Eastern in that sense, but I do think that there is malevolence out there that we don't understand. And
like, you mean, do you think manifest. That there's some kind of? I didn't mean to cut you off there, but do you think there's some kind of?
No, go ahead.
Because a lot of people say, even in magic and the occult and whatever, they say it's all psychological. You hear that, and true, psychology plays a massive role in things, but I think a lot of the people are negating the metaphysical realms. Like, there's nothing exists in the metaphysical realms, and I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. What are your thoughts on that, though? Like, do you think that they're like what Jung's talking about? Like, maybe there's some kind of thought form that comes from the collective that easily sits into a certain type of person's consciousness rather than, say, you or me or someone else,
Yeah, I will answer that question with two distinctions: memes and archetypes. Now, I think that the archetype of the malevolent spiritual entity, I think is like a carnivore, like a lion going after a deer, or whatever the fuck, I don't remember, the antelope, whatever be the case. And it's something that should not be trifled with. It is evil to us for all intents and purposes, but it is probably more of a raw energy. Like, I don't explicitly believe in the devil. I believe in shit that we shouldn't fuck with. And I think there is some stuff that should be left to God's hands. I do believe in a higher power, but I don't believe in a traditional hell and devil. Like I said, I'm a bit more Eastern, just to put it.
Sure, yeah.
Easily.
No one's judging you, brother. You're good.
Sure, yeah. No, I'm just stating the case, because it's also interesting. Like, talking about serial killers and possession, one might think that I am staunchly like in a traditional mindset. So. Yeah. Honestly, an Eastern perspective informs a lot of this. But as I said, there is a lot of respectable, like the only tradition, quite frankly, that is respectable left in the Catholic Church, other than the individual person's faith, which I don't. I respect everyone's personal faith, is exorcism. It's like, you just look into it. It's a whole rabbit hole that is quite fascinating. Like I said, it's Halloween. I'll go on this tangent a little bit because this helps explain some of the brain psychology. There's even a book that's been put out by an Ivy League psychiatrist. I don't remember. It was Harvard or Yale or something. And this guy was a skeptic. His name was Dr. Richard Gallagher. And he's still in practice to this day. So he's still respected for that matter. So a couple decades ago, he was approached by the Catholic Church and asked to basically vet out a case for possession to make sure it wasn't mental illness. And he said, I don't think I'm qualified for this. I don't even believe in this stuff. And they said, no, that's why you're qualified. We want you here because you're not going to sugarcoat anything. You more than anybody are going to want this to be mental illness. And we also like you because you're respected in the community, and we think that you're actually going to have an open mind. So, because you might see some stuff that surprises you, and he went there, and as an open-minded skeptic, ended up working with the Catholic Church for decades with other psychiatrists that were trained in this, and that's a whole rabbit hole. But the fact not only that Catholic exorcism continues, but has been even like studied now more than ever, at least in part, is pretty fascinating. So
Yeah, I heard. I mean, it could be a rumor,
definitely-
but I heard that they make sure that a person isn't mentally ill or something. Like they, I mean, I have to.
No,
get
these
it.
days no, I can confirm that. That's the history. Is after the death of Annalise Michel, those Catholic priests were tried and convicted of manslaughter. So that changed everything in modern Catholic exorcism from then on. And it's been and the ramifications were priests working with trained psychiatrists and shit like that to make sure this doesn't happen again, because if it ever did, there would be riots in the streets practically, like there almost were in Germany because of this girl. So it was very serious stuff.
Yeah, so they do
I
it
actually-
to cover make sure that don't happen again, right? I mean, is there a case that, I mean, there obviously there's Ramirez, Dahmer, there's some really deep, but is there a case that you think that's really interesting that most of us, like say someone that hasn't listened to your show, that stands out to you that we haven't heard of?
Well,
Like the guy in
I'll bring
Alaska,
this up
maybe.
again. Yeah. I'll bring this up because at least it can, people can go check out this other episode. It's been years, but you and I once talked about this guy in an episode of Black Hoodie Alchemy called Schizophrenic Serial Killers, where, and this always just weirds me out so much, but in like a fascinating way.
Right.
Oh, everything all good? I heard something in the background. Someone jumped in. That's cool. Yeah. Okay, now I know what that sounds like. The shoemaker of Philadelphia, Joseph Callinger, this is one of the weirdest serial killer stories I've ever heard, because this guy was raised, he was adopted by a family in Philly in the 70s, to be an apprentice to be a shoemaker from like as soon as he could be. And his family kind of treated him more like a shoemaker apprentice than a son. And unfortunately, he also turned out to be extremely schizophrenic. And some of that dysfunction and pent up rage mixed with the schizophrenia, mixed with the relentless shoemaking, literally coalesced into these apocalyptic visions of a man trying to make literally the perfect shoe given to him by God to save humanity from the woes coming from the soles of their feet, which caused most of their mental issues. And that also, in order, is where it gets kind of convoluted, murder also gets into the mix. And this dude also started recruiting his children to go out and I don't think they ever explicitly murdered anyone, but they kind of like got in the mix and like broke into people's houses and shit like that. This guy also, you remember in I Am Legend with Will Smith, he's got a whole wall of rats that he's experimenting on to figure out if he's figured out the vampire serum. Well, this guy in real fucking life, Joseph Callinger, had a similar situation in his basement with hamsters, where he was literally trying to actually, I swear to God, make them real shoes. And he was trying to communicate with them, whether it be telepathic or verbally. He was open to either. He explicitly stated this, and get them to tell him whether or not he was making more comfortable shoes, because he was trying to make the perfect shoe given to him by God to cure humanity's mental illnesses. So
what?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's that thing where they have a divine
speechless.
mission, right? It's always like, I got a divine mission kind of thing, That's weird.
It really is.
Like, why would God tell you? But he had to have been hearing voices, man. Like, but why would God tell you to make shoes for people? I don't know. That's weird to me.
Yeah, so we once upon a time a few years ago, I read a bit more of that story to Joe. So you should honestly go check that out as a listener if that just made your jaw drop and leave you at a loss for words because that's why it's a weird, interesting story. There's no way for it to not leave you at a loss for words. But that Israel Keys one is interesting. We could talk about that a little more since that is the one that is so close to home. That was literally happening in my backyard. And I'm using literally in the right sense of the word.
Like he was your neighbor?
Not exactly. Not,
was he your neighbor?
No, I'm joking a little bit. Like, I mean, it was in my town. It was actually in my town, but it was not literally in the backyard. But it was pretty close to the backyard for a couple reasons. Like one, I remember the flyers going up for his final victim, Samantha Koenig, all over town. I was in like 8th grade, and honestly, it was the middle of winter. People who just didn't know any better just kind of figured, like, she had. Sometimes people will literally walking on the way home, like a moose will come out of the trees, and just trample you, and they won't find you for days or something. Like that kind of stuff happens in suburbs in Alaska sometimes, So, but that's what I remember thinking because I was just a kid anyway. But really, what happened was this high schooler, which might have been a college student, no older than that, was just taken at gunpoint in like 10 p.m. or something from one of those roadside coffee barista stands. That's like a trailer that just sits there, and you just drive up to the window, and yeah, he just abducted her and drove off, and it was all on camera and everything. And that guy he was really it was trippy for a lot of reasons. Like, I mean, just all the basic sadistic stuff aside, like I said, he would also rob banks, and he was successful at doing that. And he would hide his bank robbery money in what are basically murder kits, like across the Pacific Northwest. And he would bury it like fucking buried treasure, like lubed up guns, knives, duct tape, Drano, thousands of dollars in stolen bank money. And you just put it in a fucking duffel bag, gangster style, and just bury that shit, and then mark it on a map. And law enforcement has only actually been able to uncover so many of these. So I'm not fucking shitting you, any of you listeners, when I say that theoretically, in real life, you could go out and look for serial killer buried treasure. There are still thousands of dollars of buried
in Alaska,
stolen bank money all over the Pacific Northwest. But yes, it basically, this won't matter to a whole lot of people. But if anyone, excuse me, like is listening from, that I grew up with, if off of Highland Road near Eagle River High School, like that was where he was known. I actually read in heavy research for this once. This is just for example. I don't know if any money was buried there. They don't because it wasn't said in the description they found. But they found in his various descriptions of all these places and all his notes that he had a murder kit stashed there. That was like not that far off from one of the high schools I went to. Did
you go looking for it?
I haven't been out there since. I've only visited, and I don't have time for that. But if I had learned of that while I was still there, I would have gone and checked it out. Yeah, I don't think I would have been able to find it because I know the general location, which is still pretty impressive.
Why wouldn't he just get rid of it? Why? What's the point in like? See, this is what I'm talking about. It's like some of the. I'm not advocating for it, but some of the psychology, it's like demented or not demented. It's almost like they feel like they live in a world that doesn't have real world consequences. Like it's a video game or something. I'll just go hide this stuff and stash it all over like little treasure hoards. That's weird, bro.
Let me read you a few paragraphs to basically build up to this fairly chunky, but I mean it's only like a few sentences quote from Ted Bundy talking about the where you're getting at. So Um, the serial killer talk takes a decidedly left turn to look at the clear-cut, outwardly healthy Ted Bundy, and who was known at times to comment on the quote-unquote entity that he said he was always surrounded by. He never leaned on it hard in his criminal defense. He talked about it sometimes, but he never put all his chips in on this. He spoke of it from time to time, and these are even some things that like some of the newer documentaries have talked about. Like his girlfriend went on record saying that he talked about this, or
Yeah.
like one of the girls he dated, whatever. So he said he would drink an egregious amount of alcohol before he would go out, and is something that Dahmer also is said to have done. And in this weird way to sort of stultify their more shameful natural human elements, the elements of them that would be shame about this, they try to separate that with alcohol, and that's a very deliberate thing so that they can get further into the zone of the kill, and they deliberately use alcohol for that. And I'm not trying to say that alcohol is all bad, but I'm
No,
saying
no,
it's
no. I hear
weird
what you're saying.
that
It's just,
that seems to be
so that
yeah.
means here's the thing,
Commonalities.
man. So that means that if they're drinking alcohol to make their shame go away, like Wolf is saying in the chat, well, maybe they don't have empathy. Well, you know what makes it
That's
even
for
more
sure.
dark?
They definitely
It's
also
like,
don't have empathy. You're right about that.
yeah, but if they're
They're
drinking
psychopaths.
alcohol, then is it empathy? Is it the shame they're trying to wash away, or is it just the fear of getting caught? I wonder.
I think there's some level of shame because that can be different than sympathy and empathy. Like you could recognize the fact that you are being animalistic without caring about what you're killing, I think. And recognize that you're being some sort of I think at the very least, many of these people, like Dahmer as example, were disturbed by the fact that they didn't understand what they were experiencing. They didn't really try and fight it that much in the long run, but they were disturbed by it. Look, my doggy's in here. Let me.
So do you?
Let me escort
So
her out. She's sleeping very loud.
this makes me think about
Anyways.
things like, how do we decipher? I mean, I don't feel like I'm not safe as a person. I mean, there's just certain things that are out of my control, but I try to walk around the public. I feel pretty safe for the most part. Like, I think I got good intuition. But I think what bothers me, and I think what fascinates most of us about like serial killers and demented folk, is how they can come across like just totally like normal people, have a drink with you at the bar, say hi to you on the street, ride the bus with you, whatever. And they're hiding this whole other kind of demented world, and I hate to say it, it's mostly dudes that I know of, but I've dated some girls even that I'm like, man, I wonder if this person could like if this person really lost it, I feel like they could kill somebody, Maybe I'm not saying this isn't a man or woman thing, but what I'm saying is I've ran into like one out of maybe 50 or 80 people that I've come in contact with too intimately, whether it's friendships or relationships, where I thought, well, man, this one person might actually, it makes you wonder, right? Like, how do we identify these people? Because it's almost like we can't. That's why this shit happens and they get away with it sometimes,
Mm-hmm. So I don't have, I'm not saying it's like the whole answer, but I do have a concrete answer. And to help me, to give me something to unpack, I'll read this quote given by Bundy in prison. It says, "What began to happen was that," and he's talking about his habit of killing, his compulsion. "What began to happen was that important matters were not being rearranged or otherwise interfered with by this voyeuristic behavior." That's what he calls killing people. But things were postponed or otherwise rescheduled to work around hours and hours spent on the street at night and during the early morning hours. And as as the condition develops and its purposes or its characteristics become more well defined, it begins to demand more time of the individual. there's a certain amount of tension, struggle between the normal personality and this psychopathological entity. This condition inside him, Bundy himself speaking in the third person, seems to be competing for more attention. A point, excuse me, a point would be reached where we'd had all of this reservoir of tension building. The tension would be too great, and the demands and expectations of this entity would reach a point where they just could not be controlled. So that's and so yes,
So
I don't
they're
think we should
blaming it
take
on
him
the
at,
voice, basically. It's the voice,
well,
man. It's not me. The voice is taking over, kind of thing. Entity, whatever.
well, no, I think that's the easy way out. I think it's actually a bit more nuanced than that, because I think people throw out all of the archetypal symbolism, the unconscious symbolism here, because they say, oh, they're just trying to forego all their responsibility. Wait, they're not going to get away with it with talking about demonic possession one way or the other. That's never worked. So let's not even worry about that. Why are they talking about this to begin with? And to me, that entire quote, but I also, for that matter, I don't blame you for bringing that up. That's a healthy thing to bring up. That's an important thing to bring up. But when you analyze it, it's not, like I said, it's really not going to help them get away with it. So what are they really talking about? Especially when we go back to one of the original points with these weird commonalities of temporal lobe epilepsy and things. And to me, it is talking about maybe the alcohol mixed in here. It seems like he's talking about an addiction, and that is not to take away from the responsibility, but he's talking about this ebb and flow. We often, you and I, in our own conversations and on the show, have talked about addiction in the sense of like the archetypal hungry ghost. That's a very common spiritual Eastern motif and sentiment. So it does kind of seem to be, and I don't think these people are, I think that they're still highly culpable. They should still be tried for their actions.
Yeah.
They know what they were doing, but what they did was commune with something. And I don't necessarily think it's a literal Satan. It might not even be a literal entity and like be conscious, like, something that is sentient on the other side. But they're building something. They're building a tulpa or something like that, an egregore. And I'm remembering, we've talked about a lot. I was kind of going in a direction earlier on, and we kind of veered off, but
I veered you off.
the nature, it's all right. The nature of the serial killer, to build off of what I was saying already and remember what I was gonna say, is two-part. I think it's archetypal in the sense of like trying to control. There's that sexual element we talked about, this and that, but there's also this weird mimetic nature to it, where now that we are in this weird postmodern serial killer world, serial killers are literally getting inspired by legacies. It's very disturbing.
That's what I'm worried about
People.
too.
It's already happened. So you have cause. You've just cause to be concerned. The Gainesville Ripper was. No. I think that was just a media thing. The Yorkshire Ripper. He was actually legitimately inspired by Jack the Ripper. That's an easy example. Israel Keys, to make a callback, was heavily inspired by people like Ted Bundy. People who are able to live in the world around us. And to bring it back to your question and talking about addiction and things, I think we're looking at a scale of neurosis here. Like the regular end, the regular human end being more so addiction and dealing with. It doesn't have to be chemical addiction. It could be addiction to shopping. It could be addiction, all sorts of habits you have. And just feeling that compulsion and having to work with yourself and find that ebb and flow of free will. Because, we don't have all free will. Like, you don't get to choose when you're hungry either, So it's sort of just learning the ebb and flow. And that's part of being human. But then when you let neurosis exacerbate and it's compounded with maybe head injuries, temporal lobe epilepsy, severe abuse as a child. Then you start to get this person that just, that's how you get the abnormal psychology that at hand. So, and that's how you get this person that flies into the outlier. We're looking at a spectrum, but if the healthy spectrum is just basic addiction, it seems like the far reaches, the far yonder reaches of this spectrum is someone being addicted literally in some sense or another to the rush of dominating another human being to the point of just murdering them. Like the greatest, what is that old story where they hunt the humans, the greatest game or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it, man. That's the archetype right there. It's sick. It's fucked up. Literally, like the other Alaskan serial killer, Butcher Baker, who was actually a baker. There's another thing. This was in Anchorage. I lived in Eagle River. Israel Keys lived in Anchorage, but some of that shit that I talked about was around Eagle River, like that murder kit, for example. Butcher Baker, I don't remember his name offhand. Very easy to find through that name, though. In the 80s, worked at a building I frequented many times. It was an old Kroger. It was an old Safeway, a bakery. So he worked in the bakery while he was murdering people. And what he would do was, and I wasn't there in the bakery because this was the 80s, but that Safeway bakery maintained, and it was weird. For being
see, that's what I'm talking about, man. The guy's just a normal, like everybody thinks, his name was Robert, by the way. Oh, that's Bob Hansen,
That's it. Yeah.
Whatever, man. Like he's just the baker, butcher, whatever. Like he's no big deal. He's just harmless guy, but he's a freaking
And
weirdo.
Here's the thing. Before we veer off, because I'm glad you brought that up, like the little cherry on top, I think of you talking about being able to discern these people. I don't think we ever know for certain. But what I do think we can be certain about is that gut feeling that something is weird about someone.
Yeah.
And you just have to trust yourself we're not going to know always what that weird thing is. Maybe they just, strangle themselves with a belt and jerk off while they're alone. Like they're not hurting anyone, but that might be giving you, that might be giving you uncomfortable energy that you're picking up on. Or maybe they are freaking murdering someone later. Like just when in doubt, trust your gut. And I think that is the way to stay the safest because we don't always know for certain, but we can do gut checks and those do work. I really think so. Just don't put yourself, try and help someone if you can, but don't pull over in the dark for a hitchhiker or something like that. Just don't do it. They're gonna unfortunately have to figure it out if they're a real person, a genuine person. Shit sucks sometimes, and you can't save everybody. Just like it's just like I'm never gonna go skydiving. I don't think I don't judge anyone for doing it. I think that's cool, but if I were to ever die skydiving, before I died, I'd be like, God damn it, I'm an idiot. Why did I do this?
I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane. Yeah.
A fucking idiot. Yeah.
Well, in all fairness, in this community specifically, and I don't mean to bash on our community at all, but one of the biggest reasons, it's Halloween, of course. I want to talk about this kind of scary stuff. But on the real note, let's say you're going to conferences or you're meeting new friends and stuff, and it's the spiritual, occult, paranormal community, whatever. I've met personally more people that creep me out. Not a lot, but on that kind of level where you're like, man, something's just off about that person. In this community, that's why I stay in the shack. I don't go out very much, in this community specifically, for some reason. And usually, I don't want to say their name, but I remember talking to this one person at a conference, and they were telling me how they got this message, man, like you're talking about, like the message of a divine message that they were here to help people. And then they started talking about how certain people needed to be punished and there's not enough justification. And that they started diving into
major red flags for sure.
Right. And then this person started, they're like, how people just have premarital sex and all that. And then they started, and I was just sitting there like behind the booth, dude, going, man, this person's unloading all this stuff on me. And, they're like, yeah, I listened to your show since this time, whatever. And I'm thinking, where are they getting this vibe from me that I feel all this stuff that they're talking about? And the whole thing that really wigged me out the whole time is that person they didn't blink. They were staring right through me the whole time they were saying it. And I'm like,
oh, shark eyes, bro.
Yeah. And the thing is, man, like, it's not a person that could physically like take me or whatever. It was just, I just had that weird feeling like this is the kind of person that if I don't give them the right answer, they're going to sneak up on me in the bathroom and gut me, like, that feeling was loud. You know what I'm saying? So,
I get it. I do get it.
Yeah. It was really, really loud,
And I say err on the side of caution because you never know. And I think it is just simply better to, maybe, don't live in fear, but do your gut checks. I think I would always rather opt out on something and follow my gut than, like I said, ignore my gut and do something anyway, because then I'm going to be like punching myself because I'm like, oh, dude, I had an indicator. I should have followed. Why didn't I follow my gut? I know that works.
I've heard several women tell me the same thing. Like, I'm sure you have too, like friends, whatever, they're dating some creepy dude or something like that. And you can even tell them, man, I got a bad feeling about that dude. And they'll tell you, yeah, I had a weird feeling, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt and I shouldn't have done it. I mean, how many times have you heard that? I knew something was wrong with that guy.
Yeah. Plenty of times. Yeah. If you got that strong gut feeling and you sit with it for a little bit, like it's not just like you started to feel it and like an hour in you're making life decisions. Like that gut feeling won't go away. Do not ignore that. At the very least, heavily research it before you make your decisions, but don't ignore it. That's for damn sure.
I guess because we're at the top of the hour, I got to take like a short break here. But I guess one of the biggest things I would like to ask you about is because I noticed this, especially like on your podcast. I'm not saying you triggered it at all, but it was really weird after you started talking about serial killers and cults, and then all of this stuff just came into Netflix one after the other. Do you feel like, how much does the media attention actually affect the behavior of these people nowadays? Because now we get them on Snapchat. Now they're on, I feel like it's getting a little bit too glorified, That's just my opinion, though.
Well, let's go to an extreme as an example. I don't think this has raised more in the recent years, but it's always been a thing. And what I'm about to say, and it is an example of the fact that there are always going to be some people glorifying this stuff. These serial killers have always had women throwing themselves at them in prison. You know what I mean? I mean, they can't do much because it's mostly weird, like letters and stuff. But every single fucking one of them, they all have legions of fangirls that would fucking die for them, basically.
That's just as weird to me as the serial killer themselves, man. I don't get that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. I can't even understand it. The Gainesville Ripper, for example, had one of his fangirls co-write a book with him, and she was some sort of like psychologist. She was a working woman.
And a therapist, too. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So
that scares me, man.
Yeah, tell me about it. And the Gainesville Ripper was one of the most sadistic. By far, he was the kind of guy who would just like abuse people, eviscerate them, and then set their bodies up like Jigsaw from the Billy from Saw style, like for cops to find them, like ritualistically and shit like that.
Yeah, kind of like it's almost like some of those the women, they get attracted to it because they want that deep kind of like Joker and what's her name, Harley Quinn connection. They want that.
Yes,
and they feel like I'm going to
Yes.
get that with this serial killer guy. He's just like the Joker in the movies, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and certainly not to blame all of that on Heath Ledger or even more specifically Joaquin Phoenix, because that again,
Jared
that
Leto,
archetype has been around
whatever.
for a while.
Yeah.
Or even, no one's being inspired by Jared Leto's Joker, brother.
Yeah, I've heard I've heard. I mean, no dudes, but I've heard plenty of girls be inspired by it, for sure.
Oh, fair enough. I haven't really considered that angle, but I could see how some really crazy women could fan out over Jared Leto Joker.
It's weird too. We were talking about that the other day. I think it was Wolf. We're talking about that in prison, because I used to go visit my cousin in prison back in the day, you know, and then he's a good dude. Like he just wanted to rehabilitate his life, but there were so like these dudes would have new girlfriends every week, and it's like, what is it about, you know? Like some of these guys are violent criminals, murderers, rapists, even, you know. They get visitation. They got a new girlfriend every week. So
yeah,
I don't get it, man.
some of this honestly just couldn't. There's no concrete answer and couldn't be summed up too easily, and that's part of the conception of my book Hunt Manual. Not exclusively to do, but the idea of the hunt being, you know, in a sense, chasing down your inner dragons so that you may vanquish them. You know, some of these guys get caught up just in the chase. They're not trying to do any inner vanquishing. There's like this strange projection where they think they're doing. I think that's part of it too. They on some level that is not tangible to them, that they can't, you know, they can't explicitly say. They're doing some sort of projected shadow work where they think they're cleansing the streets, or they're doing some sort of diligence, and instead of what they should really be doing is going inside and taking that violence to their own animalistic nature. You know, that's the alchemy of it. If Bundy were to take that sadistic rage and force that upon himself psychologically, so that he felt the brunt of that full on in that Jungian fucking black book sense, be a totally different person, man. But they're not going to do that. They're too weak for that. So what they do is instead they inflict that upon other people, and it completely in the physical. No cerebral context whatsoever.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Our fascination with murder mysteries and serial killers and these shows fascinates me from a conscious explorative narrative on the dark side. But of course, we're going to talk about the stuff that scares us probably all week long here on Lighting the Void. Plus, don't forget we have the Halloween special coming up the 30th and the 31st. We'll be broadcasting all fun, funny, even scary storytelling stuff Thursday, Friday night, maybe Saturday, probably not Saturday, but Hallows Eve and Halloween. So keep it tuned in live to the Fringe FM. We're going to ask just a few questions for Anthony, but we got to take our short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Transmission log 6. Live status unstable. Critical failure in transmitter array. Recommend immediate shutdown.
If we go dark, who tells them what happened?
There will be no them to tell.
Then we finish it. This is Fringe FM and Blue. If you can still hear me, Fringe FM. We made it through.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Honest Ed's Automobile Emporium, featuring Honest Ed's unconditional guarantee. If you can find a car dealer anywhere in this county who will sell you a car cheaper than we'll sell the same car, simply bring a copy of the bona fide written offer signed by that dealer's sales manager, and we'll personally convince that dealer to raise his price to match ours.
This Halloween night, Fringe FM becomes haunted radio. Then, at 7 p.m., the curtain rises for The Sinister Symphony, a brand new horror radio drama. It's one night only, and tickets are disappearing fast. Get yours now at Eventbrite. Haunted Radio, here on Fringe FM.
Recording initiated. Transmission log 4. Live status unstable.
Machine, what's that noise on channel 6?
Feedback surge detected. Source unidentified.
Kill the feed before it burns the board.
Unable to comply. The noise is not in the system. It is the system.
Not tonight. Not again.
Integrity 0%.
Signal restored. You're still hearing Fringe FM somehow.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's new antiperspirant toothpaste, the world's first toothpaste that not only cleans your teeth, but also protects you from the embarrassing odors of that dreaded problem, tooth sweat.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Introducing Monarch Mindwear, the neural headband that filters out doubt, fear, and original thought. Think faster, feel less, belong completely. Monarch Mindwear Trademark, a product of Solaris Group.
Well, it's not all serious. It's not all serious here on Halloween. I mean, gotta get this serious stuff out of the way. You know, we got Anthony Tyler here with us tonight talking about the dark psychology and the mind of serial killers. I think more I think I'm a bit more focused on, which I know there's a crazy nature to try to, change other people, but I am a little worried about how much we glorify this stuff. Here's the thing, that if you really wanted to freak yourself out, and we won't do this tonight, maybe some other night, but if you really wanted to freak yourself out, there's some unsolved, I'd say, cold cases still involved with unknown serial killers. So there's a series that's coming out, I think, that came out about that, that shows that there's still cold cases. So there's still people romping around. I mean, talk about scary enough for Halloween. There's still people romping around this country that are of the nature of what we're talking about. I think one of them's called the Doodler. What's his name? Go ahead, man. What were you saying? The statistic?
I would be interested to hear any names you got that are floating around. But generally speaking, the FBI states that there's an estimated number to a 25 to 50 active serial killers in the U.S. at any given time, and that also includes everyone being more unfortunately prolific, like a Ted Bundy, to just someone who happened to kill 3 people in succession, because that's the bare minimum in terms of a statistical analysis, is killing 3 people in a committed way that is not like a spree killing, like you mentioned, and it's not contract killing, because that's another thing, and that is similar psychology, but it's not the same. It's an overlap. You get into people like, say, Richard Kuklinski and all the mob, the famous mafia.
The Iceman,
yeah. Yeah.
So there's this guy named the Doodler. Have you ever heard of him?
I haven't, no.
Unidentified still, probably still alive, but it's a name connected to an unidentified killer who targeted gay men at the Bay Area between 74 and 75. That was in San Francisco. He killed 6 gay men and possibly more. He stabbed them to death, leaving them on the beach. And that was his thing. There were survivors that reported meeting the guy, some slender black guy between 19 and 25, which means he's still alive, at a diner after the bars closed. He said that his assailant skillfully drew animal figures on a napkin and claimed to be attending school as an aspiring cartoonist, hence the killer's nickname, the Doodler. So this guy's still walking around. He had I guess he just decided he wanted to go out and kill a few gay guys and just leave them on the beach, And there was the cooling off period. He separated them, still got away with it, So he's somewhere in San Francisco right now, walking around probably, if he didn't move, There's another guy named, they call him the Jeff Davis 8 and the Jennings 8. So those are for the 8 murder victims discovered in the bayous around Jennings, Louisiana, and Jefferson Davis Parish, about 90 miles west of Baton Rouge. Okay. There was the women, most of whom had connections with drugs, like you said, sex work. They were discovered in swamps and canals between 2005 and 2009. So the only thing they know is there's this former strip club owner and alleged pimp, I guess, this guy named Frankie Richard, said that he knew each victim and became a person of interest in the case, but was never officially charged. So he passed away, but they didn't charge him. So that means that guy could be, running around. And I can go, there's a bigger list than you think of people that could be, but also got away with stuff, like the New Bedford Highway killer. They still hadn't found that person, So,
well, remember the Golden State Killer was only caught within the last several years because one of his distant relatives sent in DNA through 23andMe or one of those companies, and then through a lot of backtracking and analysis, they were able to build that profile and eventually find that Golden State Killer in his 80s or something like that. So, yep, they still float around. And I would like to say a couple more things to round home plate and give people a little bit of like spiritual, esoteric food for thought relating to all this macabre chaos. I mentioned before the break, essentially, that if someone like Ted Bundy were to, instead of doing all the sadistic things he did, like basically inflict that rage upon himself in a not like physical way, in an existentially apocalyptic way, you know, that black book sort of Jungian way. What if he really dove into all the sickness inside him and tried to understand it and transmute it? Well, he'd be a completely different person, but he was too weak for that. And this quote by Jung right here from Answer to Job, I really think touches on all that very, very explicitly. And this is from the introduction of Answer to Job. So this is Jung trying to explain his mindset in that whole work. I hope to act as a voice for many who feel the same way as I do, and to give expression to the shattering emotion with the unvarnished spectacle of divine savagery and ruthlessness produced in us. These experiences come upon man from inside as well as outside. He must be affected by it, otherwise its full effect will not reach him, for in this way he transforms the blindness of the violence on the one hand and of the effect on the other into knowledge. There's something about the transmutation, the confrontation of that darkness inside of you, and chasing that dragon in order to vanquish it and salvage reclaim the lost elements of yourself. And that's something that these sadistic people are completely unwilling to do, so they just project all of that outward. And so there's also a story. We've talked about this also years ago, but I think it would be crazy to not bring it up here. The story of Angulimala, who was an old Buddhist student thousands of years ago in, I think it was India. Yeah, it was, because he had contact with Gautama Buddha in the story. So this, long story short, we'll give you the abbreviated version. Because it is directly about serial killers, believe it or not. Like, I'm not a full-on, like, I'm certainly not a scholar in this subject, but as I understand it, this might be the first, like, recorded story of an actual serial killer. And it's real Buddhist lore. Like, this is actually part of the Buddhist spirituality. It's so far back that it's hard to say how much of this is true. Probably not all of it. Probably inspired by something, and it really speaks to the spiritual nature of this. So Angulimala was basically a student who was very annoying, not to the original Buddha, but of Buddhism. And his teacher sent him away on a fool's errand. It was meant to be a weird, surrealist riddle to keep him occupied forever. He said, collecting 1,000 fingers. And he was like, I don't know, he'll stumble across corpses, and I don't know, maybe he'll get thrown in jail or something. This guy eventually did, because he was already sick. And like I said, the scale of neurosis, and this teetered further. He eventually, because I'm abbreviating stuff, started just like guerrilla warfare style, hiding in the outskirts of the wilderness of villages and murdering people and taking their fingers, because Angulimala translated means necklace of fingers. So this guy became so prolific, that the king sent his like freaking soldiers after him, and this guy, like Rambo style, picking off soldiers in the wilderness, adding more fingers to his necklace. And then eventually the Buddha goes out there, finds him, and the guy is about ready to strike the Buddha, and he just kind of stops because, of course, he's the Buddha and he has like an odd presence to him. And the Buddha tells him, he just says, you're only good for breaking things. You really can't put anything back together. And he breaks it down in a very eloquent way. And I believe how he explicitly shows him is he tells him to smash a branch off a tree, and then he's like, all right, now put it back on the tree. And because this is where the story gets Faustian, and it kind of veers from, unfortunately, what we see in most serial killers today, but it shows a spiritual nature and idealism. Angulimala had some humanity left in him, and this moved him in that Faustian sense, where Faust, right before he died, sort of truly realized the error of his ways, gave him a heart attack, killed him, but that whole process actually saved his soul and brought him to heaven. So this serial killer realizes all the error of his ways, foregoes everything and follows the Buddha as a disciple, basically, for the rest of his life, and goes on like pilgrimages with the Buddha. He's like a disciple to Christ, basically, and he goes through alms throughout the villages where the monks ask for food to sustain themselves. That's the general practice, and they're sustained by the community. And this guy would go out there with the other monks, and he would get stoned and beaten, and he would ask the Buddha, like, why is this happening? He says, well, it's your fucking karma, man. You're gonna have to take this like a man, basically, and this is your path. If you want salvation, this is your path. You're being judged by the people, and I'm pretty sure he didn't die from it. So I don't know if the Buddha explicitly said, I'm going to make sure you don't die, or the people had enough class to not kill him, but they made him atone. And the brilliance of it is that in that Faustian sense, he actually took it and atoned for it. And so I think that's the idealistic, almost the Platonic ideal of what can be said about at least the archetype of the serial killer. Now, I can't think of a single real world example of it, but that is, again, a real Buddhist, like a mythological story that probably has some sort of truth in history. But so where does that leave us? Certainly not with the glorification of serial killers, but maybe a glimpse of understanding some of the humanity gone awry within them. And maybe that's all I can really say about it. But I do think ever since I heard that story, it's always stuck with me, and I found it really fascinating.
Yeah, I think this whole thing is fascinating to me. Like, that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk about tonight. I want to figure out why. One thing I always, I'm interested in, and one of the reasons why I like your show, because your show has a lot of storytelling and narratives in it too, and it's really good. But why we're so fascinated with the macabre, I talked about it last week a little bit about Halloween, more from a spiritual nature. But I will say that humans themselves like to, we like to play with our fears a little bit. We get fascinated by them, which is one of the reasons why true crime is up so much, but the podcasting is up so much. But also, like, it's a whole other level that I think we need to understand when it comes to a person to actually kind of do this stuff, And I'll leave links too at some point after the show to kind of links to the FBI behavioral analysis kind of thing. They have a site about this stuff. There's a few books, like if you're really interested in this stuff, there's a few books like Mindhunter by Johnny Douglas, The Anatomy of Motive, which is pretty still relevant. Without Conscious
Hunt
by Robert
Manual
D.
by
Hare.
Anthony Tyler.
And Hunt Manual too. Yeah, dude, I will promote your book, brother. I was getting to that.
No,
Jesus, man. But there's a responsible reporting guidelines thing too, because these, bro, like when you look into these links, these people get a flood of calls, about serial killers, who they think is a serial killer, and all this other stuff. So there is some ethics behind this whole thing too, But I just don't think that it would be a proper Halloween without bringing you on and talking about what really freaks people out, If we watched, dude, we watched the Candyman the other night. Like, I was like, let's go watch some scary movies that used to really scare me. And I can see, like, maybe society's become desensitized to what used to freak us out, or maybe that's just a part of growing up, because it didn't scare me at all. Like, none of the traditional scary movies scare me whatsoever anymore,
To be fair, I think there's some desensitization, but also from an artistic perspective, just to cut everyone some slack, including yourself. Horror is a lot like comedy, where good comedy, you watch it a million times. You still might enjoy it, but you're not just going to laugh at it the same way. You just can't jump the same way at horror, the same way as you did the first time. And that's natural. So, but I think on top of that, there are levels of desensitization that we need to be careful of.
Yeah.
But horror is that unique genre, again, like really comedy. I mean, again, it's the classic dichotomy of tragedy and comedy. A comedy used to be a story with a good ending, and a tragedy used to be a story with a bad ending. And now it branched out into all different kinds of genres, but it's still boils down to the same stuff ultimately. And yeah, I think there's use of it all. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on and having this discussion.
Yeah, bro.
I've just now been getting back into the swing of things, so I wasn't able to do as much for Halloween as I would have liked to, like broadcast wise and everything. So this helps me check a little bit off my box as well, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you came on. And, later we're going to, in the Halloween spirit after this, will be, if I can get the tech to work right properly, we'll be streaming some zombies action too. So if you're into zombies, you can hang out on the YouTube channel. I think I made a phone call down into the Everglades, so hopefully Tippy will be on too. We'll see what happens, but,
I think so.
This is my favorite, dude. This is like my favorite time of year. I just wanted to get the darkest stuff out of the way because to me, this is the darkest stuff. The rest is just like hauntings and ghosts and stuff that is more fun to me. All that stuff's more fun, So we'll get that out of the way.
Agreed.
April, by the way, and whoever went and watched Hereditary, you made it through it. You probably scarred your brain for life, but, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the movie, later. That movie does freak me out. So there is one out there.
My top pick. I'll say this to exit out. My top pick for the Halloween season, if you haven't seen it, anybody out there, is When Evil Lurks. It's a Spanish film with subtitles. It's a newer film too, but
is it gory?
It's an existential, like Lovecraftian film. So it's not like Art the Clown bisecting somebody, but yes, it is gory for sure. So be warned for sure. But it is one of the best, potentially the best period, like a demonic possession film ever done. It's fantastic.
I'm not.
I also recently watched 28 Years Later. It was a good movie, but I was really let down. I won't go on a tangent, but I will say I've been waiting for closure on that series since I have been a fan of horror movies, basically since my balls dropped, and they still didn't give me closure, and I'm really not happy.
I'm not big into gore because nothing impresses me with the gore stuff. To me, it's just like, whatever.
Well, there are moments of gore in When Evil Lurks, but they don't lean into it. I just don't like it when a movie leans into it too.
Right, exactly. It's like they make it more about the gore, There's also our very own, one of our hosts on the radio station, Alex Exum's B movie, Assault of the Sasquatch. Make sure you go watch that. Alex Exum plays the villain in that movie. He does a really good job. I think he outperforms everybody in that movie. But Assault of the Sasquatch. And we'll be doing so. Anthony, along with Mary Ducina and Alex Exum, myself, and some others, will be making some appearances on Halloween. So tune in. I think Anthony's got some cool stuff that we're going to play from his podcast that's pretty recent. And we will do like the storytelling stuff too. So all of this week, we'll be trying to talk more Halloween-y stuff as we work up to it,
I'll tease it a little bit. I am going to be reading and providing a little bit of commentary on but I'm going to read it in full, the short story by H.P. Lovecraft, Beyond the Wall of Sleep, which is
a good one.
Like classically Lovecraft horror, but like a lot of weird esoteric spirituality too. So I think it'll be great.
And on that note, folks, if you want to, just keep it live here on YouTube, and momentarily we'll be trying to kill zombies until we can't kill them anymore. I like to do that stuff too. And here's something for you, brother. A little Deca for you. How about that?
Nice. Love it.
Bye now, y'all. See you tomorrow night. Keep it live on the Fringe FM, damn it. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.
I was sitting in a room that looked out onto a garden, and the stillness filled me. Bitterness drifted from me. I was as near paradise as I am likely to get again. I was thinking of the chaos we had caused in one another. I was thinking of our future. All of our lives
lives, they've had control of us through their schools, through their electronic media. They've had control of us all of our lives. They have programmed us. They have made us become reactionary. We don't think, we react to what they do. They tell us that progress means all these things have to happen. They tell us that we can't go back to the old way. They tell us be realistic. But there is no old way, no new way. There is a way of life. If there's anything that the predator class fears, it's a clear-thinking human being.
The dead increase their invisible honey.
Woke up with the conviction I could change things. Every dream's a variation on the same theme. In the machine where blood money remains king. The gluttonous whole court.